she finds her daughter on the floor of her bedroom, shot and bleeding and turning blue.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our 8th episode of Killer Kids. This episode is extremely tragic. I'm gonna jump right into it. I hope you guys are prepared for this tear-jerking story because I know I definitely got emotional when I first researched it. On May 9th, 2019, 15-year-old Martice Fuller shot and killed his ex-girlfriend, 15-year-old Kaylie Juga, in her parents' home in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Before I jump into this tragic case, I of course have to give you guys some quick background information on Kenosha. With a population of 99,986 residents, Kenosha is the 4th largest city in Wisconsin. It's located about 40 miles from Milwaukee and is currently undergoing a huge gentrification. The crime rate in Kenosha is 22% lower than the national average. Your chances of falling victim to a violent crime are 1 in 256, and your chances of falling victim to a property crime are 1 in 70. On the actual Kenosha Police Department website, an annual crime report for 2019 and 2020 were not yet published, but on the Wisconsin Department of Justice website, the 2020 annual arrest report states that there were a total of 22,469 juvenile arrests that year in the state of Wisconsin. 807 of those arrests were for violent crimes. Martice Fuller was born on May 16, 2003. He was born and raised in Kenosha. I couldn't find a lot of information on Martice's parents. What I was able to find was that his parents also lived in the Kenosha area. Martice attended Bradford High and was a star athlete. He took a lot of pride in being athletic. He ran track in middle school and played football while at Bradley. There are actually several videos online of Martice's highlights playing football. His Max Preps profile online listed him as his team's quarterback. It's safe to say Martice was definitely hoping to gain some scholarships playing football. Martice and Kaylie were in a loving yet tumultuous relationship. The two met in school and had several classes together. They were together for about 10 months. The couple had many loving memories. Because the two were so young, they didn't really go on dates. But Martice spent a lot of time with Kaylie and her family. He was often over for dinner, movie nights, and even spent Thanksgiving and Christmas with the Juga family. 15-year-old Kaylie was a loving and extremely supportive girlfriend. Whenever Martice had a football game, Kaylie and her mother, Stephanie, were right there front and center taking pictures and cheering him on. Kaylie would take a picture of Martice, go on Twitter, and tweet what a great job Martice was doing. On October 18th, 2018, before one of Martice's big games, Kaylie tweeted him saying, quote, "Good luck tonight, babe. Show them what you're made of." End quote. And a month prior to that game, on September 17th, 2018, Kaylie snapped a photo of her and Martice and tweeted, quote, "Blessed with the best." End quote. Martice was Kaylie's first boyfriend ever, and she loved him dearly. Although their relationship seemed loving, things began to change when a whole different side of Martice began to scratch the surface. Martice was very controlling. He would check her phone and was always questioning Kaylie about where she was when the two weren't together. His controlling behavior quickly turned abusive. On one incident that happened at Bradley, in front of many classmates, Martice and Kaylie were arguing when he suddenly grabbed Kaylie by her ear and dragged her to the ground. Another incident that actually involved campus resource officers and the principal occurred on January 17th, 2019. Kaylie was walking to class when Martice approached her in the hallway and he wanted to talk, but Kaylie didn't want to talk. When they walked into class, Martice sat next to Kaylie. Kaylie quickly asked her teacher to have Martice moved, but Martice refused. He then got up and tried to grab Kaylie's cell phone out of her hand, but Kaylie was holding on to her phone tight. So Martice grabbed Kaylie's wrist, bending it backwards and yanking the phone out of her hand. He then threw the phone back at Kaylie when ordered by the officer to give it back. The principal placed Martice under an abeyance agreement. An abeyance agreement is a contract between the school and the student. The contract states all the rules the student must follow in order to avoid getting expelled. Martice's agreement stated that in order for Martice to remain at Bradford High, he must have no contact with Kaylie while they are there. And he was removed from all of the classes the two shared together. Kaylie told her parents about the incident, but Martice and Kaylie managed to convince her parents that the incident was blown out of proportion and it wasn't as big as the school made it out to be. Kaylie's parents allowed Kaylie and Martice to continue seeing each other, but warned Kaylie to keep her guard up. Now, before I go on, I want everyone to understand that domestic violence isn't just hitting your partner. It also involves controlling your partner's mind and convincing them that it was just a mistake and it won't ever happen again, followed by apologizing 1,000,000 times. A month after that incident, Kaylie decided to break up with Martice. And this time, it's for real. She ignores his calls, ignores his text messages, and just avoids him completely. On February 28, 2019, Martice confronted Kaylie. He cornered her against the lockers and demanded that she spoke to him. But Kaylie just ignored him. She managed to break free and walk away from him. But Kaylie was scared. And the next day she reported that incident and Martice was actually expelled. Martice getting expelled basically meant that he couldn't play on the football team anymore. And being on the team meant everything to him. It was his future. It was his ticket to scholarships. Martice told many of his friends that Kaylie, quote, ruined his life, end quote. After getting expelled, Martice began stalking Kaylie. He would call her numerous times at all hours of the night. And when she would ignore him, he would use his friend's phone to call her. He would even call Kaylie's job repeatedly. It got so bad that Kaylie had to actually quit her job. In a letter that she wrote to her manager, Kaylie says, quote, "Thank you for the opportunity to work for this company. I appreciate you hiring me for my first job. Unfortunately, due to the situation that has been going on in my personal life, for my safety, I will have to look for a job with multiple people around, and somewhere where he does not know where I work." End quote. That was a letter that Kaylie wrote to her manager at the dry cleaner that she worked at. Before Kaylie quit her job, her manager agreed to actually keep the door locked in case Martice ever showed up. But Kaylie became too scared and she just couldn't do it anymore. After Martice got expelled, his anger towards Kaylie began to grow into hatred. He started asking many of his friends where he could get a gun. He wanted a gun to use as, quote, protection, end quote. Martice even went as far as sending one of his friends a Snapchat message asking if he could help him get a gun. During this time, Martice left his grandparents' house where he was living at the time and just randomly began staying with friends. He couldn't go back to his parents' house because of negative interactions he had with them in the apartment. Now, I couldn't find what those negative interactions were. It's strange to me that he couldn't go back home. His parents didn't want him home at all. The nights Martice spent at all of these different friends' houses often became therapy sessions for him, where he would confess his hatred for Kaylie and how he wanted to kill her. By mid-April of 2019, Martice managed to get a gun, a semi-automatic pistol, and he also got 380 PPU ammunition. On May 6, 2019, just 3 days before the tragic murder, Martice spent the night at another friend's house named Desiree. Martice and Desiree have known each other for quite some time. That night, Martice told Desiree how Kaylie and her mother, Stephanie, had made his life a living hell, and they had caused him to lose what he loved most. He asked Desiree to help him kill Kaylie with the gun he had, but Desiree never agreed to helping him. She just offered him a place to rest that night. The following morning, after leaving Desiree's house, Martice actually sent Desiree a message on Facebook saying, quote, "Do that hit with me," end quote. May 9th was just another normal day for the Juga family. Kaylie's younger brother went to school, her older brother went to work, her dad went to work, and Kaylie went to school. Kaylie's mother, Stephanie, always picked Kaylie up after school, and that day was no different. As the Juga family went about doing their day-to-day routine, Martice is being dropped off at one of his friend's house who lives less than a mile away from Kaylie's house. When Martice gets to his friend's house a little before 2 p.m., he tells his friend that he needs to go to his grandmother's house. So he leaves his friend's house, gets on a bike that he borrowed from another friend, and headed over to Kaylie's house with a backpack full of clothes. In that backpack was the gun. Meanwhile, back at the Juga residence, Kaylie and her mom are just getting home. Kaylie's mom parks her car in the driveway, heads inside with Kaylie, leaving her garage door open. Now, I want you guys to remember, Martice knows the Juga family, he knows their day-to-day schedule. I mean, he was Kaylie's boyfriend for 10 months. He spent time with the family. He knew who would be home and who wouldn't be home, and he knew exactly when to go there. Inside the house, Kaylie was getting ready for work, playing loud music, and her mom was in the bathroom. They had no idea Martice was across the street in the park. Around 2:56 p.m., Martice enters the house through the garage, heads upstairs into Kaylie's room, and shoots her 5 times. Kaylie's mom hears the gunshots accompanied by Kaylie screaming and run towards Kaylie's room and comes face to face with Martice, who was holding the gun. Martice points the gun at Kaylie's mom, and Stephanie says, quote, "You don't have to do this," end quote. And Martice says, quote, "Yes, I do," end quote. He then lowers the gun and points it at her chest and shoots her once. Stephanie manages to run back to her bedroom, closing the door behind her, but while she was trying to close the door, Martice fires the gun again. The bullet hits Stephanie on her left wrist. Stephanie then runs to her bathroom and locks the door. In the bathroom, Stephanie calls her husband Nick and then immediately calls 911. Here's some audio from that 911 call. Now, before I play the audio, I want you guys to just know that I extracted the audio from the trial, so it may not be very clear, but you will be able to make out what Stephanie and the dispatcher are saying. I want to thank WGTD News for their amazing live coverage of this case. Alright, here is the audio.
I'm just saying. Okay, where's your daughter? Oh my God, you said it's her ex-boyfriend? Yeah. Do you know where he is? No, I don't think that he was Martice Fuller. Okay, how old are you? I'm 38, 39. Oh my God. Okay, and you don't know where your daughter is right now? No, I don't. We actually full of blood. I'm waiting for the test. I need that. Please. I'm getting you out. You don't know where he is? No, I'm not going to. Oh my God. I have to go see her. He shot in the chest, or shot in the heart. I told him no. She said, yeah, I'm doing this. And he took a fucking away. I think, I don't know. Okay, you think he took off running? I don't know where he is. That's fucking crazy. What's he doing, anyway? Oh my God. Over my 14. He doesn't have to hurry up. Okay. So we don't know where he is right now. Okay, where's your daughter? Oh my God, she's in my room. She's in the bedroom?
You can clearly hear the pain, the fear, and the agony in Stephanie's voice. One can only imagine what she was feeling that day. Police arrived to the Juga home in 3 minutes, secure the downstairs, and head upstairs where they can hear Kaylie's mom calling out for help, and rush into Kaylie's room where they find Kaylie on the floor and her mom kneeling next to her trying her best to perform CPR despite being shot twice. She wanted to save her daughter's life. Officer Eckert of the Kenosha County Sheriff Department began to perform CPR on Kaylie. Realizing that the CPR was not helping, he called out for another officer to come upstairs. Deputy Wagner quickly rushed upstairs and helped Officer Eckert carry Kaylie outside to the front lawn, and they continued CPR until paramedics could take over. Emergency medics also began to perform CPR on Kaylie. After numerous attempts to rescue Kaylie's life, No pulse was being detected. Kaylie was officially pronounced dead, just a few short minutes after being shot. Kaylie's mother, Stephanie, was rushed to a nearby hospital where she had to go into surgery. Kaylie's autopsy revealed that Kaylie had a total of 5 gunshot wounds. She had 3 gunshot wounds on her chest, 1 gunshot wound just right under her ribs, and another gunshot wound to her head. The gunshot wound to her head was just under her jawbone. Kaylie's mother, Stephanie, had to undergo surgery 3 times. She had a bullet that was lodged in her chest that surgeons were afraid to remove because of potential damage to other organs. After shooting Kaylie's mom, Martice quickly leaves the home through the garage, runs back into the park where he changes clothes, gets back on the bike, and rides his bike away from the Juga home. He was later picked up by a mutual friend of Kaylie's around 3:30, and when he gets in her car, he starts crying and tells her friend that, quote, a group of girls who knew him shot Kaylie, end quote. Things moved pretty quickly in this tragic case. Back at the Juga residence, Detective Brightshaft of the Kenosha Police Department Investigation Bureau arrived, as well as Officer Valeri, and collected numerous amounts of evidence. They collected blood from the carpet upstairs, and they collected a total of 6 cartridge cases from Kaylie's bedroom, as well as 2 bullets. One of the bullets was actually lodged into the floor. In the following hours of Kaylie's tragic murder, police could not locate Martice. Martice had begun to visit numerous family members in the Wisconsin area and was always seen by his family carrying a black backpack. What was in that bag? Martice had clothes and the semi-automatic pistol he used to shoot Kaylie and her mother. While visiting another family member, Martice had grabbed a trash bag and a diaper. He placed the gun in the diaper, taped the diaper, and put the diaper in the trash bag. Martice and his cousin then threw the gun in a sewer. By this time, police still had no idea where Martice was, but the search for Martice began. Law enforcement named Martice as a suspect and began to ask the public for information on Martice's whereabouts. His face was all over the local news. The Fuller family became aware of Martice being wanted after watching the news that evening and seeing a picture up of him. The search for Martice was intensifying. One of the family members' homes was actually raided in efforts to locate Martice, but he wasn't there. Martice was at a cousin's house when Martice's cousin became aware of her aunt's home being raided. She knew something had to be done. On May 10, 2019, around 6 a.m., Martice's cousin called 911 to inform them that Martice was at her house, and he wanted to turn himself into police custody. Kenosha police arrived shortly after, placed Martice in handcuffs, and brought him into custody for questioning. When questioned by police about his whereabouts on May 9th at the time of the shooting, Martice told police that he was at his mother's house at 12 p.m. and took a nap until about 2:45 p.m. He then woke up and went to a nearby park for a walk. When police questioned Martice's mother about that, she initially told police the same, but then came clean and admitted that Martice was never there that day. Martice was charged with first-degree intentional homicide, attempted first-degree intentional homicide, and burglary. In Wisconsin, any child that commits a crime between the ages of 10 and 17 are considered juveniles. Their cases are usually handled in juvenile court. If a child between the ages of 14 and 17 commit a very serious crime such as murder, reckless homicide, sexual assault, hostage taking, kidnapping, armed robbery, aggravated burglary, or any drug-related crime, their cases are waived to adult court. Because Martice committed murder, he was actually charged as an adult, and his bail was set at $1 million cash bond. On May 24th, Martice entered a plea of not guilty. Now, this is where things really take a crazy turn. A trial date was initially set for Martice, but that date had to be postponed after it was discovered that Martice and his mother, as well as other family members, could have possibly tampered with the jury. It was discovered that certain members of the jury might have known Martice's parents. Martice faced an additional charge on soliciting communication with jurors. After new jury was selected, another trial date was set, but that trial date had to also be postponed due to COVID. Martice's trial officially began on March 15, 2021. This is almost 2 years after Kaylie was tragically murdered. Martice was in custody that entire time. During the trial, District Attorney Angelina Gabrielle called numerous witnesses and officers to the stand to recount what happened on that tragic day. Kaylie's mother, Stephanie, also took the stand to relive that horrifying moment in her life. Martice was sitting just a few feet away from her, and he wouldn't even look at her. Numerous members of Martice's family also took the stand, stating that he had admitted to them that he killed Kaylie. Martice's defense presented no evidence, and Martice declined to testify. The evidence against Martice was overwhelming. They had the gun, they had surveillance footage. It was just unbelievable. On March 19, 2021, Martice Fuller was found guilty on all charges. Martice was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Here's some audio from that sentencing.
It was unfathomable for all of us to think that a boy 15 years old could plot and plan ruthlessly to kill Kaylie and her mother. There's no final day for them, their loved ones, or for your own family. Your actions killed a young girl, wounded and scarred a mother, damaged 2 brothers and a father, and that damage will not end emotionally, physically, or societally. Their burden is enormous and endless. This was a family that warmly admitted you into their circle of family and friends. They ate with you and included you in family activities. They were good to you. They considered you a friend of their daughter. And when teenagers of all ages choose to date and be with friends with other people, you decided you would not allow Kaylie to make that choice.
Martice received credit for 742 days. He is currently 18 years old and is being held at the Green Bay Correctional Institution. He has no discharge date. During his time in custody, saying that Martice has gotten into trouble would be an understatement. He got into a fight with another inmate and picked up an additional battery charge. I always save the victim of these tragic crimes for the end of my show, because I don't want them to be forgotten. I want their lives to be remembered. Kaylie Juga was a kind, loving, and caring young girl. She excelled in anything that she put her mind to. Kaylie was an honor roll student. She loved cheerleading, music, and dancing. Anyone who knew Kaylie said she always had a smile on her face. She was a hard worker. She had plans of attending university and even adopting children. At 15 years old, Kaylie was determined to succeed in life. But Kaylie was not the only victim. Her mother, Stephanie, was also a victim. She lost her daughter. I commend Stephanie and the entire Juga family for just being able to have their lives be out in the open. Their trial is up on YouTube and it can be viewed by millions of people. She got on that stand and had to relive that tragic moment. But she did it because she wanted justice for her daughter. A visitation in celebration of Kaylie's life was held on May 20th, 2019, where friends and family came together to honor Kaylie. Rest in peace, Kaylie. You are loved and missed by your family, friends, and everyone who knew you. Thank you for always being kind and bringing joy to everyone's life. This week's missing child is 15-year-old Sanaya Law from Toledo, Ohio. Sanaya Law has been missing since September 14, 2021. Sanaya was last seen in Toledo wearing a purple bodysuit dress. She is African American, 5'3", and weighs about 160 pounds. If I have any listeners tuning in from Ohio or the surrounding area, and you guys have any information, please contact the Toledo Police Department at 419-245-3340. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate you listening to my show. Don't forget to follow the show on TikTok and Instagram at Killer Kids Podcast, and that's Killer Kids with a Z. Thank you for listening. Be well.